The grass grows where you water it. Men, I think the same thing is true. You're either going to water the 30% of your life or you're going to water the 70% in your life. And it's going to grow either one.
Welcome to the Step Up Podcast, where our goal is to help you step up as a man in every area of your life. I'm your host, Dave Kinney, and I'm joined by my pastor, Pastor Chris Kouba. Our desire is to help you take proactive steps toward personal growth as well as leadership development of yourself. Men, specifically you, because we know that God has called you to a high form of leadership, and it's our goal to make sure that we equip you with those things. And here we are, our first ever, our inaugural episode, and I'm joined by Pastor Chris, lead pastor here at our church. We're happy to be here. What a day, man.
It's pretty cool, man. We've been talking about this for a long time. Excited to be able to finally get it going, and hopefully it'll be an encouragement to you as we go through this whole process, for sure.
Do you feel like we have now made it because it's podcast time?
I mean, it feels like a lot of people have a podcast.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how many podcasts are good. Hopefully we're in the good category for sure, but
time will tell. Who knows?
Time will tell, hopefully, for sure. But it is certainly, it's a pretty cool medium. I love podcasts. I listen to podcasts. I listen to tons of podcasts. Do it every day, every morning. And so it is pretty neat to be able to do this one specifically because, I mean, you and I both are passionate and we know we want to reach men. And so this specifically is targeted for men, hoping that it'll be an encouragement and help to men because we want to see men thrive. I mean, we want to see men step up. We want to see men do what God's called them to do. And we want to have a lot of fun doing it too.
Yeah, we do want to have fun. The goal at this point in the podcast is, obviously, it's going to help you. Obviously, we're going to be doing content curation that really benefits your life, that benefits your marriage, that benefits your family, that benefits you in the workplace, and all of those different things. But we also do want it to be fun.
Absolutely,
that's kind of part of it, and let people see kind of like behind the scenes of everything that we do and everything we get to be a part of, which is awesome. For episode 1, I had this thought. So last week, you were asked to speak at a really large event for, really it was just for large church leadership. And you went and you spoke and you did great. I was not with you, but I had at least 5 people that were in that meeting text me afterwards about your session, your breakout, and what you did. In fact, we both know this. A guy on our team said you need to write a book about it. So, maybe that's next. We'll see. But everything starts with the podcast.
That's right. Yep.
So
here we go.
But that talk was about the 70-30 principle.
Yep.
Explain to us what that is, and then kind of walk us through how you came to that information.
Yeah, well, this is not something that is been tested. This is not something that has been scripturally, biblically, super accurate. I've never seen a commentary written on or anything. It's just basically my interpretation of Genesis chapter 3 and kind of applying that to people's lives, people's situations, and all of that. Here's the principle, 70-30 principle. 70% of what you do, your job, your life, your marriage, your family, all of that, 70% of what you do is going to be awesome, okay? Like on its best day, the best possible situation that you may have, 70% is the best that you're going to be able to do. 30% is always going to suck. Right? It's always going to be difficult. It's always going to be a strain. It's always going to be a trial. And I would say that the 70-30 principle, the reason why it's so important is because if you embrace that, man, it frees you from a lot of different things. And it frees you to be able to recognize whenever Genesis chapter 3, whenever there was Adam and Eve, let's go back all the way to Genesis chapter 1. God looks at Adam, makes Adam, and looks at him and he says, everything's good, everything's good, everything's good. Gets to Adam and he's like, this is not good. This is not good. A man by himself, not good at all. We got to have a help for him. So it says that he makes the woman from the man. It says then the two are joined together. And then it says he gives them this instructions. They can go to all the different animals, name them. They can do all the different trees. They can eat of it. There's just this one tree. Don't do it. Of course, what happens whenever you tell someone not to do something, the one thing that they want to do is that very thing that you told them not to do. You've got little kids at home. You know that.
I mean, that's the best way. When we're trying to get the kids to smile for a photo, I have 3 kids, 8 years old, 5 years old, and 1. And in order for us to get all of them looking at the camera at the same time and smiling, all we have to do now, we don't dance around and do that whole thing, but all we have to do now is say, boys, don't look at the camera and smile. Don't do it. Don't smile. Don't smile. And then boom, great family pictures every time.
Eventually, mine are older. They're going to outgrow that, but it's the same thing. It's like, don't touch this, or wet paint, don't touch. What do you do? That's the one thing you want to do is go touch. Is it still wet? Kind of a thing, kind of that type deal. So Adam and Eve, same situation. They do whatever they want. Don't eat this one tree. And it says that they go and they eat of the tree. Of course, there's so much into that. Maybe we can get into a later podcast about just the fact that Eve ate it first. And it says Adam was there and didn't step up and do what he needed to do. And everything's kind of fallen apart since then. The reason I got the 70-30 principle, though, is because I want to read for you Genesis chapter 3, verse 16 through 19, because it's important what it says. It says, to the woman he said, I will surely multiply your pain in childbearing. In pain you shall bring forth children. Your desire shall be contrary to your husband, but he shall rule over you. Now, I don't know anything about that verse. I have no way to compare, nothing like that. So I just want to give you a heads up, but I'm sure it seems pretty rough. And to Adam, here's what it says. Because you have listened to the voice of your wife and have eaten of the tree of which I commanded you, you shall not eat of it. Cursed is the ground because of you. In pain you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you. And you shall eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread till you return to the ground. For out of it you were taken, for you are dust, and to dust you shall return. Here's where I get the 70-30 principle. This suggests that from this point going forward for all of humanity, work, life, everything you do, there's going to be an aspect to it because of the curse. It's just going to be hard.
Yeah, that's the thorn and thistle.
It's just going to be bad. It's just going to be toil. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be comfortable. It's not going to be convenient. And so therefore, it's important for us to recognize, let's celebrate and live in the 70 and not get overwhelmed by the 30%, which at the end of the day is going to happen.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that what you're doing is bad or wrong. It just means it's the curse. It's just the curse. I can't tell how many times I've done this to my own kids. It's just the curse. I'm sorry. I don't know why this is the way that it is. I don't know why this is so hard, but it's just the curse. And it kind of reminds us, one, to long for something in the future, the fact that heaven, there's going to be no more mourning, no more crying, no more pain. But I think it also allows us to put into perspective, even on the best possible day that I'm going to have, there's still going to be some things that just aren't going to be perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. So take it now, Genesis chapter 3, all the way to today.
Yep.
Men are dealing with leadership issues at home, at work, with their even socially, with their relationship with authority and government and all of that sort of a thing. The 70-30 principle, why is it important for men today to not only just understand it, but to lean into it and embrace it?
Because I think what I see a lot of times, let's just talk about spiritual stuff. Men go to church, men are there, which is a big deal by itself. And then you hear they're supposed to be the spiritual leaders of their home or whatever, and they're like, man, this is hard. Like, this is not easy to do. And they tend to kind of recoil and give up as opposed to push forward. And a lot of times they make the hard, the 30%, become 100%. Instead of recognizing, no. Like, yeah, of course it's going to be hard. Like, life is going to be hard. There's going to be things that are going to be difficult. I speak for a living. I do a lot of deep thinking. That's part of what my job is and what I love doing. One of the things that's frustrating is whenever I've got a lot of friends, though, who are incredibly handy. I mean, like our kids pastor, he like builds tables like, for fun.
He built a screened-in porch
for fun, just because he thought it would be great. I'm the guy who, whenever something goes wrong at our house, I'm like, who do I need to call and figure out even what questions to ask? Or I'm taking pictures, heading to the hardware store or whatever. I'm not thinking and wired that way. I want things, though, home ownership to be easy. Okay, I want stuff with my kids to be easy. I want to be able to coach my kids and for everybody to kind of get in line. And there's this thing where you can easily just get so frustrated because things aren't going perfect and begin to think like, well, all of it must be this way. Yeah. And because of that, you either don't try like you should or you don't embrace. Yeah, but there's so much that's positive, right? I mean, there's 70% of this, though, that's awesome. I'm getting the opportunity to do this. That 30% can easily become 100%, and it just begins to get overwhelming. I see so many guys who don't step up, mainly just because they get the hard and they just bail.
Right.
They just think, man.
Just defeated.
if I can't perfect this, then I'm out. Instead of realizing that, look, 30% of the best day that you have is the curse. It's not going to be perfect, but instead you can move forward and know that, look, your best case scenario is 70%, but with that, that's going to allow you to have some pretty amazing things, some amazing wins, both in life and spiritual, with your family, with your wife, all of those things. And you just got to step up, keep trying, and knowing you will not reach perfection, but you can still enjoy every bit of it.
Right. We always gravitate toward the path of least resistance. That's just, it's almost innate.
Totally.
And that's why you see so many different things kind of leveling up, like you right now. Like you're doing something that I think is just insane. You're doing the carnivore diet. Tell the people what the carnivore diet is.
Yeah, it is sort of insane. I'm also doing the 75 hard on top of it, which is just sort of dumb in general. But yes, it is the idea of the carnivore diet. Basically, you eat meat, you eat salt, and you drink water. That's literally all you do, right? So, and there's definitely aspects of this that are, it's expensive, and there's, you get a little bit of an adjustment period. But on the other hand, gosh, I feel great. I feel amazing. I feel all of those things. But I think there's this idea that a lot of times you can apply, whether it be this or something else, that like, unless it's easy and perfect, I'm out.
Right.
And instead, nothing good comes easy, one. And I think that goes back to, that's just the curse. Like, just embrace it. Guys, if you're trying to do stuff with your wives, if you're trying to do stuff with your kids, it may not always be easy, but I would simply tell you this, that's okay. It's part of the curse. It will definitely be a strain and a toil. It's promised in God's word that's going to be the case. But 70% is going to be absolutely amazing and worth it in every single way, whether that's something as easy as the carnivore diet, some kind of like crazy workout plan, investing in your family, investing in your wife, whatever it may be, stepping up in the church, you got to go for it.
Yeah, think about it. Think about it in your marriage. I know you and I, we look up to a lot of the same similar couples who have been married for 40, 50 plus years, and they have just an unbelievable legacy. And I know I've talked to one of those men, and he said, hey, being married as long as I've been married, there's some parts that are just hard. They're just difficult. You're just going to walk through seasons of valleys and difficulty and all of that sort of thing. But in order to, when you get to where I am, and you are on top of decades of faithfulness, it's all worth it.
For sure.
And it goes back to something that you tell our church here that really is just kind of resounded through the halls of United City, is that leaders do hard things.
Absolutely. Yep.
And the importance of that. Talk about how that phrase, that mindset has benefited your life, family, marriage, even as a leader. And as an organizational leader here within our church.
Well, I've added this phrase a lot to it. Leaders do hard things, and sometimes they do it alone.
Yeah, I've heard your kids quote that to me. It's awesome.
I think a lot of times we assume leadership means you get to be an authority, you get to be in power, you get to be in charge. And no one understands the backside of that. That's just, but you also have to make the tough calls. I think you also have to be able to actually make the decisions, like just making them alone, even if you're right or wrong, may not be as important as just sometimes you just got to make hard calls. Or the fact that there's also those the backside of that when there's a loneliness, it's lonelier up top, those types of things that you got to think through. I think, but I can go back and think about, man, I don't want to do all of those things because it's simply hard. Or I can say, but 70% of it's going to be awesome.
Right.
Like 70% is going to be worth it. Like there's no question about it. Is being a leader, leaders who do hard things, does that mean that's a bad thing or a tough thing or a difficult thing? No, that's an awesome thing. Because again, as long as I know hard things are going to be the case, I can also experience the positive, the blessings of leadership, knowing you get a chance to have influence. That's what I think is so important with men. You have the opportunity in your home to have generational influence. I met with some guys this morning, and we were talking through that about this whole idea. Neither one of these guys had dads who really gave them much of a model. I was fortunate to have an unbelievable dad who did model that for me, but these two guys did it. And I told them both this morning, guys, I know it feels hard for you. It doesn't feel like it's just clicking always. It doesn't feel like it's just seamless and really, really just convenient and always you know exactly what to do for the next step. but your kids will know nothing else than a dad who loves his wife, than a dad who loves the church, a dad who serves them and serves the family and puts the needs of the families first. And I'm telling you, your kid, I told these guys this morning, your kids are going to have struggle too. But that 70% that you get to walk in, you are generationally changing things for the future. So yeah, leaders do hard things because it's always worth it.
Right. Yeah, it's a shift in perspective. And which really, it's kind of what I want you to talk about is, I know the average guy listening, I've obviously been in that spot before where you just think, PC, my life is not 70-30, it's 30-70.
Sure.
And I feel like it's not, the difficulty isn't 30%, it's 70%. And I'm just squeaking out a win every now and then. Talk about how that relates to your perspective and kind of the future as you lead toward it.
Well, I think there's a difference between work and calling. Okay, I think that's important for us to think through because every one of you, men listening to this, you are called to bring glory to God through your life and through what you do. Okay, so a lot of times it isn't necessarily meaning that you've got to necessarily change jobs. Maybe you do. I'm not trying to say that you don't. Maybe you're in the wrong situation, in the wrong place, and all of that. What I've simply found, though, is that there's a bunch of guys who are doing things that aren't on the surface super spiritual, and maybe God just wants you, though, to work through the toil of that so that you can make a ton of money so that you can invest in the kingdom. Maybe God wants you to be able to be in a position to where you can use your science brain, your math brain, your whatever brain to be in a place to where you can do great things for the company, but you can also have great things in terms of influence for just relationships for the kingdom and to leverage that. But if I believe this job is supposed to provide me all of my happiness, I would simply tell you this, it's probably not going to work.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, jobs are terrible saviors. They just don't ever work. But instead, if I believe, no, I am called to advance the kingdom, this happens to be where I get my paycheck while I do it, I believe the very same job, without changing anything about your job, your mindset can shift and all of a sudden it can become a kingdom opportunity and allow you to know, yeah, of course you're going to experience some things in the office that you're not going to love. Yes, you're going to have some relationships that are going to drive you crazy. Yes, the boss is going to have some policies that are going to really make you furious. But at the end of the day, if I know God's got me here to be able to serve the kingdom, I'm telling you, 70% of it's awesome.
Yeah.
And if you have that mentality, it allows you to know every job's going to not be perfect. I've seen too many guys that quit their jobs thinking that, man, I need to go into ministry. That's where it's going to be better. Only to realize, guess what? There's still 30% in ministry too. There's still 30% in that other job too. Jumping from place to place doesn't change anything. Instead, I just have to know this. While God has me here, as long as I'm here, I'm going to know, man, 70% is going to be the best that I'm going to get, but it's going to be awesome. And 30% is just going to be the curse. And I can blame it on the curse instead of blaming it on the boss, blaming it on the policy, blaming it on whatever else, and making those things way bigger deal than they were ever intended to be. It's just the curse. It's just part of it.
And it also shows, just as you were talking, I was thinking about this, it shows the power of our individual focus.
Sure. If
you spend your life, if you spend this week focused on that 30%, instead of focusing on that 70%, guess what? That 30% is going to take over your life.
Absolutely. It becomes 100%.
It really does.
Yep.
It really does. And so I talk to guys all the time that they may be going through difficult things at work, where their authority or a corporate decision that's being made or a directional thing, or maybe they're dealing with something difficult in their family or something like that. And my first question is, how often are you talking about this? Mm-hmm. And if they say, I talked to my wife about it, I'm talking to you about it, I talked to my coworkers about it or something, I just say, it's too much.
Yeah.
You're placing too much of your focus on that thing. Therefore, you're just kind of in your own head spiraling out of control, making that 30% a heck of a lot more than 30%, that's detrimental to the 70-30 principle.
And it's not just like positive thinking. I mean, there's a whole lot of folks out there that are just basically like, think positive and see the good and do all that kind of stuff. Yeah, there's an aspect where some of that stuff's going to play out. Instead, I just think this. Let's just act like you got a tough marriage situation, right? I've had tough marriage situations. Mm-hmm. Hillary and I have been to counseling. That's great. But if you look at the whole of our marriage, it's majority awesome.
Right.
Like it's a majority great, but I can either focus on the majority great or I can focus on the 30% that's not just perfect, that's not just fixed, that's difficult and hard and that requires me to serve her and to be patient with her and to ask her forgiveness for whenever I've messed up. Those are all the 30%. And I took too many guys walk in and they basically throw their 30% out and be like, the whole thing stinks.
Yep.
And it's like, whoa, wait a second. Does it? Or is this just, it says that it's going to be toil. That the curse, and it makes you long for the fact, if I know there's going to be difficulty in the midst of this, well, I can be a heck of a lot more patient because I can just kind of chalk it up to the curse instead of blaming my wife.
Right.
I can chalk it up to the curse instead of acting like, well, if I had better kids, if I had a better job, if I had a better situation, if I had more money, maybe, or you would just have a different 30% if you had those things.
Yeah.
That's what the Bible seems to suggest. And I think that mentality alone frees me from placing burdens and expectations upon people that would never be able to satisfy even if I had all the things I think I wanted at that moment.
I mean, I heard you say it yesterday in your office. You said, I've been married to Hillary for 21 years, and I can assure you that I've never been happier with her than I am right now.
Sure.
You don't get that benefit. You really don't. You'll never get that kind of mindset, that benefit, if you're always focused on the 30%.
Well, I told the guy that we're in the office, the grass grows where you water it. Mm-hmm. Men, I think the same thing is true. You're either going to water the 30% of your life or you're going to water the 70% in your life. And it's going to grow either one. And I would just long and encourage you just to know it's never going to be perfect, but 70 is a lot bigger than 30. Mm-hmm. And I think you've got to embrace the fact that, look, until we get to heaven, that's when it's going to be perfect. But until then, it allows us to persevere, to push forward, and to step up into these opportunities with confidence, knowing I'm not going to crush this every single. Let's just think about this. I'm a big baseball guy. The best Hall of Fame players strike out or get out 70% of the time.
Yeah. Ty Cobb, right? He's got the greatest batting average in history, and he struck out 70% of the time.
So it's just crazy to think through that principle. It just shows you, I think, that we got to focus on the positives. We got to focus on what we can do. We got to focus on what our next step opportunity is, instead of focusing on all the problems and letting those things ride and take over, for sure.
Let's shift this. Let's take this principle and really aim it toward our spiritual development, our relationship with the Lord. You mentioned how in your workplace and your marriage that you can focus on the negative, or you can focus on how God may use you for His kingdom and advancing His kingdom. Who in your life has done this really, really well?
I had a mentor of mine who was, his name was Mark Kiefer, and Mark was a high-up guy at AT&T. I'd love to have him on the podcast at some point. Was just so influential in my life and key and all of that. And Mark was somebody who, in order to get to where he was in AT&T, was one of the top guys overall in the entire global situation. He had to move a whole lot. He had to go take a bunch of different jobs that he didn't necessarily always love and care for. He had to manage people along the way, he told me about, that just weren't the easiest to manage. He had to always, because of the fact of where he was always dealing with problem after problem after problem. And Mark just kind of had this perspective, and he taught me, he says, like, man, even the worst situation that you have can be one of the greatest opportunities God has given you. Yeah. Because even if it's a bad situation that you don't necessarily want to recreate, if you had your own thing or your own situation, or your own management or whatever it may be, at the end of the day, you can still learn from that. And that little bitty shift of saying, even if it's bad, it can still be good. Yeah. Even if it's difficult and hard, it doesn't mean that it's bad or wrong or I don't need to do it. It just means that God may be preparing me for something that's going to be even greater. And I've seen that happen over and over again in my own personal life, my professional life, but I'm telling you also my spiritual life. Some of the times whenever I have had to strain and struggle the most have been some of the biggest moments of fruit on the backside of that, right? And so I would simply tell you, if you're a guy that's here and you're sitting here like, man, I kind of want to do what I'm supposed to do and follow after the Lord, but I'm trying to read my Bible, I'm trying to go and lead out, but like, man, I just 5 minutes, I don't know what I'm reading. dude, that's 5 minutes more than you used to.
Right. Yeah.
That's 5 minutes more than you used to.
And it's a guarantee that 5 minutes can change your life.
There's no question. And at the end of the day, don't base yourself based upon where I am, who've been walking with the Lord for, over 30 years and love that relationship. You got to start off somewhere. I mean, and you got to start off in that relationship and begin to do that. And I think what you'll begin to see is that that 70% grows quickly. And you'll be able to see God use you and do things in you. The first thing you got to do is take the next step.
Yeah.
Like it's just literally take the next step and see how God's going to do something with it.
We can be so focused on the end goal that we miss the next step.
Sure.
And I think that ultimately, especially in our culture, I mean, we're in a microwave culture, right?
Yep.
Where you want it and it happens now. It's instantaneous. We live in a big city, and I can Amazon something right now, and there's a decent chance it's going to be on my front door by tomorrow morning.
Or tonight.
Yes. Which has happened to me multiple times. What was the last thing you ordered on Amazon, by the way?
I told you to do a carnivore. I ordered capsules of organs from animals, which just sounds so crazy and weird, but I didn't want to have to. We're gonna have to edit that out. Actually, that's a little bit weird.
No, I think it stays in. It stays in.
So it's a way to basically get animals without having to eat the actual organs. That's super weird.
It's really great. I really love it. All the spiritual fruit that you can take from that is wonderful. Yeah, it's just crazy. It's instantaneous, though.
Yep.
That's the culture that we live in. It's instantaneous. And I think that so often our perspective on 70-30, on focusing on the 70%, is we become distracted in ways by the 30%, thinking that something within the 30% is to help knock us off course, hurt us, when really what you said is really important. It's really preparing us to have a greater 70%.
Totally. Yep.
But it's really hard to want that preparation.
Yep. The pain and the toil leads to the fruit. Yep.
Everyone loves a bonfire.
Yep.
Nobody likes chopping wood.
Yep. Absolutely. Yep.
And that's kind of the mindset that goes on there. And so, PC, let's talk these last couple minutes. You've got a bunch of men who are listening right now and just wondering, that sounds great, and I understand it. What can I do tomorrow to help myself lean into the 70-30 principle even more? Yeah,
I think it's to take the next step that's going to give you a win. Don't focus on what you messed up through yesterday. Don't focus on how hard or challenging it may feel and seem. Don't beat yourself up. If you miss a day on doing something that you want to do, don't beat yourself up. But don't miss 2. Don't miss 3. Don't let it compound. Instead, think through, what can I do tomorrow in order to move the ball forward in my life, in my family, in my marriage, in my spiritual life. Take that next step and allow yourself to be able to see the fruit that can come, knowing it's going to be hard. But don't let the hard keep you from doing hard things. Leaders do hard things.
It's worth it. It's worth it.
Yep.
Thank you all so much for listening to the Step Up Podcast today. We will be back soon with episode number 2, which I'm very excited about. Cool. It's going to be an awesome one. There will be slightly less carnivore diet talk, but maybe not all the way out. Thank you guys very much. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks for listening to the Step Up Podcast. Do us a favor and subscribe, and share this episode to help us get the word out. We would love to hear from you, so please leave us a comment and even leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. For additional information or to reach out directly, please visit chriskouba.com. That's chriskouba.com. You can follow Pastor Chris on social media and just search Chris Kouba, Kouba. You can also follow United City Church on all socials at United City Church. That's UNTD City Church. Thanks so much.